Hey guys, welcome back to Fantasy Tips. My name is Julian, and in today's episode, we're continuing our series of videos about each NHL team, talking about their players and which of their players I think have fantasy relevance, which players I think are going at a good place in the draft, which players I think are steals in the draft. So stay tuned, guys. But before we get started, please leave a like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers this year, so your support would really mean the world to me. The majority of people that watch my videos are not subscribed. Without further ado, let's jump into what I project the Colorado Avalanche's lines to be. On the top line, no surprise here. Landeskog, MacKinnon Rantanen. Second line, I project Newhook, Kadri, Burakovsky. Third line, Maltsev, Jost, and Nichushkin. On defense, we got Toews, Makar, Girard, Eric Johnson, Byram, Ryan Murray, and in nets, we got Kuemper and Francouz. All right, so what you're looking at here is the rankings according to Yahoo, and basically you're seeing the ADP, which is the average draft price where these players are being drafted. So Nathan MacKinnon being drafted on average at 3.2. So most people are drafting him at 3. Some people are waiting a bit later, but for the most part, he's going the 3rd overall. Same thing with Rantanen. He's going for the most part 7th overall. Now, I don't think I have to convince you to draft either of these guys. These guys are both absolute studs. Both had amazing seasons last year, and they are both fantastic picks in the first round. Next on Yahoo's average draft ranking is Cale Makar at 13.5. So he's being drafted 13-14 usually overall. And to me, that makes sense. I have him ranked at 17 personally, but if you do draft Cale Makar, you're basically guaranteed to have the defenseman that's going to have the most points this year in fantasy. So I don't hate that at all. Next is Darcy Kuemper. His average draft price is 22.2. As you see, a lot of Colorado Avalanche are going really early, and that's because they're a really great team. Darcy Kuemper last year had only 10 wins and 2 shutouts in 27 games, but that was because he was playing on the Arizona Coyotes, who are a terrible team. This year, he's going to be playing for one of the greatest teams in the NHL, the Colorado Avalanche, if not the best team in the NHL, so his numbers will be fantastic. The only thing that worries me just a little bit is that over the last couple of seasons, he's had some major issues staying healthy. He hasn't played a lot of games. As you saw last year, he only played 27 games. Mind you, yeah, it wasn't a 56-game schedule, but he should have gotten way more than that, right? So it concerns me a little bit, but I'm sure Colorado factored that in when they traded for him. So I'm sure he's going to stay healthy this year. I'm sure they looked into this, right? And if he does stay healthy, he's going to be an absolute steal. The only other thing is he may have to compete with Pavel Francouz for starts. Last year, Francouz was injured the entire season, and he was supposedly supposed to get 40% of the starts in Colorado last year, whereas Grubauer was only going to get 60, whereas Grubauer almost ended up getting 100% of the starts in Colorado. So if they do end up giving some starts to Francouz, it does lower Kuemper's value a little bit because he won't be getting almost every start like he's projected to right now. But, you know, I still don't hate Kuemper because Francouz isn't that amazing of a goalie. I don't think he's going to get 40% of the starts as long as Kuemper's healthy. At best, I think he'll get 25 to 30. Next is Gabriel Landeskog, whose ADP is 34.1, and there's not too much to say about him, right? He's a fantastic player. His shooting percentage looks maybe a bit high, but it's pretty much near his career average. And as long as he stays with Nathan MacKinnon and Mikko Rantanen on that top line, which is pretty much guaranteed, he's going to have a great season. He's going to be about a point per game. You really can't go wrong drafting Gabriel Landeskog in this range. Next is Andre Burakovsky, currently being drafted about 111. And last year, he had a really great season. He had 44 points in 53 games. He was approaching that point per game pace, which is really great for a guy like Burakovsky, who's only getting second line minutes. That's fantastic, right? His shooting percentage, though, was a little bit high, so I adjusted it. And instead of 19 goals, with his career average, he would have gotten 15, which is still not bad. So he would have gotten about 40 points in 53 games, which adjusts to 62 points in an 82-game season, which is still really great. So at that rate, why not draft Burakovsky? Well, I have a couple of problems with him because, yeah, he can definitely be on a 62-game point pace, and I think it's possible that he does hit 62 points this year. But his big issue, is inconsistency. Last year, he had super hot spells and super dry spells, and he'll win you some weeks for sure, but other weeks he'll just sleep and then he'll do nothing and he'll basically lose you the week because you have a guy doing absolutely nothing on your roster. The other thing to note is that Burakovsky has never played a full NHL season. He always misses a few games here and there. So he could be on a 62-point pace in 82 games, but he's probably not going to play all 82 games. He's never has in his pretty long career at this point. So next are Devon Toews and Samuel Girard. Their ADP, very similar, 125.1 and 130.3. I have Devon Toews as a pretty good value where he's being drafted, and Girard had I'm okay with it. The reason for that is Devon Toews had 121 shots on goals, which was 16th best amongst all D-men. And he had the 30th best block shots number of any player in the league last year. So he has great peripherals. Look at that plus minus too. And the nice thing about Toews is that he plays with Cale Makar. So the offensive opportunities are there not only when he plays on the second power play, but you're playing with a guy who's an absolute stud and is always on the ice when the best players are on the ice. So the offensive potential for Toews is definitely much higher than Samuel Girard. Does that mean I hate Girard? Absolutely not. He's still got second power play time and he's still a great defenseman. But he's projected to line up with Erik Johnson, which is not even remotely close to as good as lining up with Cale Makar. So that's the only issue I have with it, right? So if you have both those guys available, I would definitely go for Devon Toews over Girard. Next is Nazem Kadri at 166. And listen, Kadri has never been a bad pick in a fantasy draft. He's just never been a great one either. He's a very inconsistent player, kind of like Burakovsky. You'll have really hot spells and then really dry spells. So that could win you some weeks and lose you some weeks, just like I said with Burakovsky. Last year, his shooting percentage was very, very low at only 6.47. His career shooting percentage is almost double that at 11.2. So yeah, instead of having 11 goals, he would have had 19 in a normal season, which would have given 40 points in 56 games, which is a 58-point season in an 82-game season, right? So that's not terrible. But in his range, there are some guys being drafted with a little bit more upside, in my opinion. Lafreniere, Konechny, Gallagher, even Buchnevich, right? So, it's hard for me to justify drafting Nazem Kadri, but I don't hate it either, right? Because Nazem Kadri is definitely a great player and can win you some weeks, but he's just inconsistent, which is why I tend to stay away from him. Next is Bowen Byram, currently being drafted around 172. And while I like Bowen Byram as a player, I don't like him for fantasy this year. The reason for that is Colorado already has 3 very elite defensemen in Makar, Toews, and Girard ahead of him in the depth chart. So the offensive opportunity that Byram gets, they're going to be limited. Last year in 19 games, he only got 2 points. And that goes to show you that, he's not really being utilized in an offensive role. He can't be, right? They got Makar on the top power play. They got Girard. They got Toews in the second power play. Where is Byram supposed to slot in? If there's an injury to one of those guys, suddenly he has a little bit of appeal. But other than that, I'm staying away from Bowen Byram this year. Next is Alex Newhook, and he's currently not being drafted in the majority of leagues. Last year he played 6 games, he got 3 assists, which isn't bad. I project him to have a decent season, depending on where he plays. If he lines up besides Kadri and Burakovsky on the second line, he could have a pretty good season. Anywhere else, not a big fan. So I wouldn't draft him, but you can see where he starts lining up at the start of training camp, at the start of the season. And if he starts playing well, he's a guy you could definitely add to your team and hold on to for as long as he stays hot, because he's a very good prospect with a lot of potential. Next is Valeri Nichushkin, currently not being drafted. And I don't hate Nichushkin, but I don't have him as someone you should draft. Could definitely be a decent pickup if he plays on the second line with Kadri and Burakovsky. I need to see it first, though. So if he starts playing there and starts playing well, he's someone that I would consider picking up, not someone I'm drafting. He's someone who gets picked up pretty much every year. He always has a rise in pickups at some point because he always has a hot streak. So when he does, you can consider scooping him up. And that's it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching all the way through. I really appreciate it. Please leave a like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. It means the world to me, guys. Until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll catch you in the next episode of Fantasy Tipped.